We are here today with Neil Grant talking a little bit about his passion and what has turned into a book, Words of Wisdom from a Christian Mentor. And he gives practical, real life, and holistic advice for the graduate transitioning into adulthood. So, Neil, thanks for joining us today.
That sounds good, Scott. Thanks.
Tell us a little bit about, as I was mentioning, just kind of your passion and the work that you do with helping graduates transition.
Well, I've been helping young people, 18 to 24-year-old people that I've met, or grandkids, or sons of people at church. And they've asked me to help out with, talking to their child about or helping them with writing their resume and teaching them how to interview. And I've been doing this for quite a while. And last year I was working with three young men, and I gave them each a book over Christmas about, it was called What I Wish I Knew When I Was 20. And it was really great advice about staying positive. You fall down, you get up, think outside the box. And I started thinking, I can give these guys some good advice too. And jokingly, I called it Words of Wisdom because I know that I'll give me a bunch of thoughts on using that term, assuming it was Words of Wisdom. And I started writing them like a 3 or 4 page email every other week. And the first one was on carelessness, because I'd get emails or texts from these guys, and sometimes I wouldn't even understand it because the words were so, misspelled or the wrong word. So I gave them contentment. And then I gave them one on making Christianity meaningful. Then I gave them one on living a healthy lifestyle, which to me is the most important bit of advice I can give to anybody. I mean, you take a look around at people, in the 60s and 70s, and they're just so unhealthy. And I gave them this write-up saying, it doesn't make any difference how powerful, how rich you are, how influential you are. If you don't have good health, your later years are going to be very difficult. So start learning to live a healthy lifestyle now. And so I was doing this between various aspects. And I got up to about 10, and I said, these sound pretty good. And a friend of mine says, well, why don't you write a book? And I said, okay. So I started writing a book. So the book turned out to be about 70,000 words. So it's a good sized book, and it has 4 parts, basically. The first one is personal life advice, talking about contentment, talking about living a healthy lifestyle, keeping a positive attitude, being dependable, and how important these things are. And then it goes into the financial, aspect of their lives, talking about money management. Guys, whatever you do, stay out of debt. You got credit card debt, cut up that credit card right now. So it's words about how to have a strong financial life. And then the third part is on business aspect of your life. How to write a resume. Nowadays, resumes aren't read by people. They're read by computers who use artificial intelligence. So you better match the right words with the position description. How do you interview if you are so fortunate to get an interview? What do you stress? What do you stay away from? And then the fourth part is your spiritual life. How do you strengthen your spiritual life? And I've talked about making Christianity meaningful, making Jesus your Savior and your Lord. And what's a successful Christian marriage look like? So it's 34 chapters, and it touches upon your personal, financial, your business, and your spiritual life. I'm trying to cover the gamut, hence the word holistic. And the guys really appreciated it, and I think they've all benefited from it. And people who have read the book have really commented to me how much they like it and appreciate it, because it's good advice for the young person, let's say 18 to 28. And most of the books that I've sold so far have been to parents and grandparents who said, oh boy, my kids can really use this. So I've been fairly successful by myself. It hasn't caught fire yet around the world, around the country, but so be it. Maybe in time it will.
Yeah. So, and that's what I was going to say. And my looking at it and hearing you talk about it now, it sounds like it's a book, but it's also a reference book in that you don't just use it once, but you're going to come back to it and continue to refer to it, continue to work through it, and continue to, like you said, gain wisdom from it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the chapters is buying your first home. So how many 18-year-olds or 20-year-olds are trying to buy their first home? But, I said, hey, most people don't realize the most important thing about buying a new home is getting your credit rating up.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to go get a mortgage, you better have a 620, or if you're willing to pay a little more, you have a 580. But if you're down in the 500s and you're looking to buy a house, you better start thinking about how you can do this. And before you even start looking at and what your thoughts are about a house, here are some of the key things. What about buying a car? What about insurance? Some of these are really somewhat boring, but they're very educational on, what do I do for car insurance? What do I do for rentals insurance? That type of thing. So as you say, Scott, it's a good point. It really is not going to be applicable, all 34 chapters right now, but it will be in the future. And I'm hoping that the people will get something out about the spirituality of it as well.
Sure. Yeah, no, I love how practical, and it says it in your title, but how practical and how real life experience it is. One quick question. I just am curious, how long did it take you to get all of this together? You talked about you started it as emails. How long did it take for you to get it all together?
Well, it's a good question. Part of the spirituality things are write-ups I did teaching my Sunday school class, my senior adults. And so I used some of them, but I would say it probably took about 6 months, 4 to 6 months once I started thinking about doing it. And I had some friends help me, and they said, well, Neil, it's a little overboard here and here. So we went through, and a lot of the chapters I cut out just to make it a little bit more engaging, if you will. So I'd say 4 to 6 months. And it was very interesting when I started working with Christian Faith Publishing. I said to him, what's the probability that you'll publish this? And she said, Mr. Grant, it's about 50-50. Send me the manuscript. And 4 days later, they called back and said, you checked all the boxes, we're ready to publish. And it was a pretty exciting day, I got to tell you.
That's great. Well, is there anything else you want to share about you or about your book with us?
Well, I've done a lot of hiring. I'm a degreed chemical engineer. I'm retired now, as you can probably tell by looking at me. And I've hired quite a few people. And I really have a passion for helping the younger people that I hired, especially the ones right out of school. And so there's a lot of stories in the book about me starting with young people and how I tried to nurture them and what, what's it like starting your first job. And so that's one of the chapters, and that basically comes out of my experience of hiring these young people. But I've gone and I've got a website. It's called newgradadvice.com, and I've started doing podcasts. I've got about 25 in there now on the website. But it's on Apple, Spotify, iHeart, and Google, called New Grad Advice, coincidentally. And it goes through each of the chapters, and sometimes it adds quite a bit to it. Like in writing your resume, I've added a lot more in the podcast about specific instructions of what your resume should look like nowadays. I mean, it looks very different from when I was reviewing resumes because of artificial intelligence and the way things are done nowadays. So it's a good advice, up-to-date advice, and it's a lot of personal stories, and you'll learn a lot more than you ever wanted to know about Neil Grant. I'm taking the stories. I mean, how I started living a healthy lifestyle 40 years ago with a very simple bet, $10 bet to have a mile race with 4 guys who were younger than me. And so I paid my $10, but I lost 15 pounds. I felt a lot better, and I have been exercising for the last 43 years because of that one simple bet. But I feel great, and I live in a healthy lifestyle, and my wife is as well. And it's so rewarding that I can do anything I want. Going to the gym most every day, playing pickleball today. So I think it was good fun.
Yeah. Well, Neil, thank you for joining us. You can grab a copy of his book online. He mentioned his website. We'll link that as well in this video in the details. But you can grab a copy of his book online through Amazon, through Barnes & Noble. And if you prefer to read on the ebook, he also has it available through the Books app on iTunes as well. So thanks for joining us again, Neil.
You bet. And my audiobook's coming out in a couple months as well.
We'll look for that as well.